Let's take our employees' data again to look at three very useful functions, two of them for searching and one for comparing. So let's insert ourselves a number of blank columns at the beginning here to make use of these. The functions we're interested in are find, search, and exact. Now the exact function is probably the easiest one to explain because all that does is compare two cell values. So you say equals exact, open brackets, and you can see we have two parameters, text1 and text2, which can be values you just type in or cell references. And they effectively just compare the two cells. So in our data, we may wish to compare the town of the person whose line we're currently on, comma, and the town of the person below to see if they're in the same town. Return, and we get a false, which means the two cells that we're feeding through to the formula do not match. If I then replicate this down, we find we get false all the way, but then if I just change one of these to be the same as the one above, you see then I get true. So here I get a true because these two values are exactly the same. Now by exactly the same, I mean even down to case sensitivity. So the moment they both say true, if I go and change one of them into uppercase, for example, and return, it then goes back to false. So it's not looking at a letter for letter match, it's looking at actual case sensitivity as well. So not only must it be spelt the same, it must be in the same case. So if one is in title case, the other must be in title case. If one is in uppercase, the other must be in uppercase. So the exact function is looking for exactly the same thing. Very useful for comparisons. Now the other two, find and search, pretty much do exactly the same thing, but not quite exactly the same thing. Let's see them in action. Equals find is looking for one string inside another. So first thing we need to tell it is the finding text. What am I looking for? Well, let's say, for example, we're looking for the @ symbol. And because that's the text value, I need to put that in speech marks. If it was a cell reference, I could just reference the cell. Comma. Where am I looking for the @ symbol? Well, I'm looking in the email address, which is just along here a little, Q2. And then I have a third parameter, which is the start num. It's optional. If I leave it empty, it will start at the beginning of the text string, so character position number 1. If I put a number in there, then it will start at that point and work forwards. So I'm going to leave it blank, so we'll start at the beginning, return, and I find that the @ symbol appears at position number 13 in the email address for Wendy Parker. If I then replicate down, I find that it appears in different places. So what it's telling me is the actual position, so the numeric value of the position of the @ symbol in each of our cells. Now previously we looked at the left and right and said that the number for the left and the right parameter can be fed by another function. What about it being fed by the find function? So if I now know where the @ symbol is, let's insert, I know that I could take the prefix from the email address by saying equals left of the email address, comma, but how many characters do I want? Well, I want the number of characters where the @ is -1. So it's that cell there, -1, because I don't want the @ symbol. Close brackets, return, and I get Wendy.Parker as the prefix for Wendy Parker's email address. Replicate that down. Even though everybody's prefix is different, because we can calculate where the @ symbol is, we can now work out the prefix, so every character before the @ symbol, by simply saying left of the email address. For as many characters as we have calculated here, take away 1, because that's the position of the @ symbol. I don't want the @ symbol, so I need to be one character before it. I wouldn't even need to put the find function in a separate cell. I could embed it inside my left function here. So everything would be working in one cell then. So that's the find function, and then we've used it inside the left function. What about the search function? Well, the search function works in pretty much the same way. Equals search. What am I looking for? Well, let's look for the person's first name, comma, within their email address. Now the third parameter here is the start num. If I leave it empty, it will start at the first character. So we'll leave it empty and return. And we get told that the person's first name starts at position number 1. Now, in fact, what you'll find if I replicate down is that they all start at position number 1, except for this one, and this one. The reason that they don't start at position number 1 is that the person's first name does not exist in their email address. So Arthur does not have Arthur in the email address. Let's just hide a number of these columns. That will just help bring the email address into view. So we can see there that Arthur does not have Arthur in his email address. It says AG. And Michael does not have Michael. It has Mike. So we could check for that with an if statement and therefore trap the value. Now, if we did exactly the same thing, so looking for the same thing with the find function, you might find that we get different results. I'm going to look for find the first name in the email address, no start nums because we're going to start at the first character. And I get a 1, replicate, and this time I get more hash values than I did previously. This one's a hash value, this one's a hash value. The ones that were before are now. And the reason that these are returning hash values, if we have a look, is Grant does appear in the email address, which is why the search says character number 1. However, it's spelt with a capital G here and a little g in the email address. That's your difference between the search and the find functions. Find function is case sensitive, so whatever you're telling it to look for, it will have to find it in the same case. The search function is not case sensitive, it's just looking at the spelling and finding the exact same spelling. So these two functions do the same job, except one works with case sensitivity, that's the find function, and one works without case sensitivity, that's the search function. So they both return the starting point of the search string. So whatever I'm looking for in text string B, for example, it will tell me where the start point is of that text string. If the text string does not exist in text string B, then I get a return of hash value.